Welcome to the Word Potions podcast. I'm Chris King, and this is Strangers at Bars Sometimes Bite, Part 15. A week later, Magistra was all but cleaned up. I helped bury Elvar bodies and set fire to the Felcher. I even took a turn patrolling the cave systems outside of Magistra with a few gate guards. The Felcher didn't return. We didn't even see any small raiding parties. We had won the battle. The gate engineers needed a few days to monitor the stability of the portal gate. I didn't feel like going back through the pool, so I just waited. As soon as the great gate turned back on, a group of Elhaven rangers charged through. They had explained that they'd been surprised when a large dark arm had shoved its way through the gate, then become detached and flopped to the ground when the gate shut off. After a month of not contacting Magistra, the captain of the Elhaven guards had grown worried and posted a squad of rangers at the gate. They monitored it day and night, and as soon as the connection was re-established, the rangers came to investigate. Lazuli accompanied me to the gate. We stopped just in front of it, and Lazuli turned to me. "Thanks for your help, Hampton. I knew I had a good feeling about you. I'm not sorry for the trouble I've caused you. You're a warrior." I looked into Lazuli's eyes and nodded. "I still hate the fact you dragged me out of my old life, but without you, I never would have found this place. So, I guess I forgive you," I said. "Before I forget, I've given you an official high noble pardon for anything related to Castor's son. You didn't do anything, but now anybody in Elhaven that thinks you might will know that you truly are innocent. And this is for you. If you ever need to make your way back to Elhaven, this should help." Lazuli handed me a small brown envelope. I took the package and unwrapped it, exposing a ring to the firelight. The band was silver and had a symbol etched into the side. I tried it on one finger and found that it was too small for my pointer finger, so I slipped it onto my pinky. I thanked Lazuli. After shaking his head and glancing around one last time, I stepped through the portal. The experience was odd. For a second, I felt my limbs bend in unnatural directions. Then my torso elongated, and I thought I'd become 500 feet tall. I kept walking and was out the other side before I could fully comprehend what was going on. Not much had changed since I last left Elhaven. The old familiar voice rang around the great hall as different species stood in line for one or other of the great gates. I paused for a moment and looked around. I shook my head. Something was different. I felt that I was missing a part of myself. The blade's presence was no longer in my head. It was silent, just a regular piece of steel attached to my hip. A sense of loss pierced my chest. I had grown so accustomed to its presence that it began to feel like a part of me. A familiar voice greeted me. "Greetings. The captain sends a message asking you to report everything that has happened to you in Magistra." It was the voice of Eladra, but for some reason, she didn't seem happy to see me. I smiled at her, then paused at the look on her face. It was anger and indifference. I stepped forward to greet her, but she whirled around and began walking back the way she'd come. "Keep up, Hampton. Don't want to make the captain wait." "Eladra, what's the matter? I'm happy to see you, and I thought you would be the same." Her lip curled up in a scornful tilt, bearing a fang. "If you don't know, then I guess we have nothing to talk about." She walked faster and soon lost me in the crowd. "Damn it," I muttered, as I struggled to push through the throng of tourists and travelers. Our meeting was supposed to go better than this. I made my way to the captain's office and found Eladra standing next to his seat. "Welcome, Hampton. I trust your travels haven't been too difficult. Please, if you would tell us of the situation in Magistra." I told them of everything that had happened. The captain paled at the mention of the demon Bactalis and how it had almost gotten into Magistra. "Thank you for your service. Without you, things could have turned out very differently. If you ever need anything, speak with me. We may be able to work something out," said the captain. I glanced at Eladra, but she just stared straight ahead, refusing to meet my eyes. I sighed. "There is. I want to go back to my old life. I belong on the surface with the humans." The captain stared at me for a moment, steepled his fingers, and thought for a moment. "I'm sure we can make something happen. Give me a few days. In the meantime, I'm assigning you to regular guard patrols around Elhaven," said the captain. I nodded and turned to leave. I glanced at Eladra one last time. Her face looked red and her jaw strained and clenched, muscle in her forehead twitching. She still refused to meet my eye. Fine, if she wants to be that way, she can die on her sword. I marched out and returned to my old quarters, a simple cave on level 3. I pulled off Kilzar and stared at the blade. What's wrong with Eladra? She's usually so level-headed. I didn't kill her promised, so I don't see what the big deal is. I growled low in my throat, an almost animal growl that I hadn't been able to do before my transformation. The next few days passed in relatively uneventful guard duty. Somehow, I was never partnered up with Eladra. I imagined her yelling at the duty officer about me. I cringed as the raised voices of the Centaur and Naga pulled me back to the scene in front of me. "Okay, tell me again what happened," I said. The Naga started chattering as her snake's tail pushed her live body as high as the Centaur. The Centaur reared up and began jabbing a finger at the Naga, yelling back. I couldn't understand a word that either said as they both stumbled over each other's voices. "Stop! One at a time. Naga, you go." "My name is Methalia. The stupid horse stepped on my tail, then got mad at me for it. The nerve!" The Centaur crossed his arms and glared at Methalia. "Well, if she hadn't slithered in front of me so quickly, I wouldn't have stepped on her." Okay, I said as I raised both hands to quiet their chatter. "Apologize to each other and be on your way. No sense in arguing over spilled milk." "No one spilled milk here," said the Naga. She had a puzzled look on her face. I growled through my teeth. "Apologize." They did and hurried off, glancing back at me as they went their separate ways. The captain summoned me at the end of my third shift. "It looks like you're approved to go back to the surface," said the captain. I stepped into his office and couldn't help but grin. "That's fantastic news," I replied. "You go immediately. A glamour specialist will take a look at you when we reach the surface," said the captain. "Safe travels." The journey to the surface was much the same as when I'd come down. It took a few days and was mainly a tedious affair. My first natural breath of fresh air came 2 days later. I stepped out of the old cabin in the woods and gazed around at the wet forest. "It must be fall," I said underneath my breath. Light rain sprinkled the coniferous pines, and I inhaled the fresh dampness of the forest. A black SUV sat ready for me to enter. "All right, Hampton, you're going to have to come back to this spot monthly if you are to retain your glamour, and trust me, you will want to maintain it. Keep this necklace on you at all times. It's a focusing charm that helps the glamour maintain its hold on you," said a short Elvar female. She began weaving her fingers around my face, then my neck, and slowly worked her way down. After she reached the soles of my feet, she worked her way back up. When she'd finished, I didn't feel any different, but looking into the reflection of the car door, I saw what looked like my old self. "Wow, thank you," I said, staring at myself. "One more thing. U.S. government agents will most likely come knocking. Feel free to answer all their questions, but keep Magistra to yourself." "I can do that." I got into my car and they drove me a few hours back to my house. I got out slowly, looking around. Everything seemed so familiar, yet so foreign. The very essence on the street was one of tame development. No boggles would bust in at any time. I would never have to battle in Oherga. I walked up to my front door. I heard an excited bark from inside. "Lacey?" "Shush. It's okay, girl," said a voice from inside. I frowned and backed away from the door, then went down the narrow alleyway between my house and the neighbors. I stood to the side of the window so as not to be seen and glanced around the old glass pane. A family was having dinner. The boy of about 5 or 6 met my eyes. "Mommy, why is the man looking at us?" I bolted out of the alleyway and hid around the corner of the building. My heart raced. I walked over to my neighbor's door and knocked on it twice. She answered after a few seconds. "Hello, Janice. Jeremiah, what are you doing here? It's been a year since you got carted off in those black vans." "Yeah, that's a long story. Do you know what's going on with my house?" "When you stopped making payments, the bank took your home back and a nice family moved in." "They have Lacey?" I asked. "She refused to leave. They tried to relocate her, but she ran away and came back here. I remember because she showed up at my door scratching and whining." My head sank a little as I turned away from the door. "That's all I need to know. Thank you, Janice." She slowly closed the door, watching me with a sad look on her face. I sat on the bottom step of her house. Rain began pattering on the roofs of nearby homes, and I pulled the coat tighter around myself. The sun was starting to set, and the twilight deepened as time slowly passed. I cursed as I realized that I didn't have any money or even identification. I'd been so excited to finally leave Elhaven that I'd rushed back to my old home without much of a plan. I began to remember what my life had consisted of, sitting in front of the TV, night after night. I thought of Eladra and how exciting it felt to meet her for lunch, bonding with the other trainees as we trained under the iron rule of Avalro. the thrill of battle, not knowing if I was to live or die. I stood up, causing the steps to creak. I glanced at my old house. I don't belong here anymore, I said aloud. That simple truth hurt, but I knew it to be true. I got up and began walking past my house. I heard Lucy's bark. I slowed, glanced back one last time, and walked on. I'm heading back toward that old cabin in the woods. Elhaven is my home now, for I am a warrior. Thank you so much for listening to this production of Strangers at Bars Sometimes Bite. It has been super fun to record. Obviously a lot of work, but, that's secondary. I'm really enjoying writing and reading aloud. I hope you guys are enjoying this as well. I have a couple of short stories queued up, and then hopefully we can get back to another full-length novel, but we will see, as writing takes a lot of time. And so, since I am producing this podcast solo, time is something I do not have an abundance of. But that's okay. Hopefully I can just keep on trucking. This is Chris King with the Word Potions podcast, and thank you for listening to Book 1 of Strangers at Bars Sometimes Bite.